Hey church family and other missionaries out there, this is Trevor Owen with another Mission Minute devotional thought for you. And today I want to talk about, well, how I think our world, and particularly in the U.S., is really impoverished. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. I don't mean that we don't have material stuff or wealth. We have that in abundance. We are the richest nation this world has ever seen, by far. And we consume something like 30% of the world's resources right now, with less than 5% of the population. We have material wealth. What we don't have is a wealth mentality, an abundance mentality. You see, when you're really poor, and you don't have anything, you worry about today. How can I feed my kids? How can I get water? How can I take care of today? And if you have a little bit more wealth, a little more security, you start thinking about, this month. Like, how can I pay rent at the end of the month? Like, today I've got food, but I'm worried about a month from now. And as you get a little wealthier, you start thinking about this year. Like, what am I doing? What does a vacation look like sometime this next year? How can I save for my kids' school clothes whenever, right? And the more wealth you have, the more you start thinking farther out. And pretty soon it's 5 years. Where do I want my kids to be going to school? So do I need to move or change districts? Or, what can I do with my business to make sure it's going to be profitable 5 years from now? And then 10 years, and then 20 years, and then eventually when all your immediate needs are met, you think about your lifetime. What do I want things to look like 40 years from now, 50 years from now? How can I build my business or buy houses or do all the things that I need to do to provide up to there? And ultimately, when you live in a full abundance mindset, you think about your legacy. What am I leaving to my kids? What am I passing on to my grandkids? What is down there? And the problem is, I think in our world today, we have an impoverished mindset where we're shrinking things down to worry about what we get right here, right now. I mean, you look at our political system. I mean, we are willing to throw out fairness and to just fight and claw and scrape to try and have our side win. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about equality. It's not about, these higher ideals. It's about winning. And it's on both sides. It's a poverty mindset. And what's really sad is I think in many ways that mindset has crept into the church. How do we get what we want to make sure we are comfortable or we are safe or we have ours? It's a mindset that says today we need because we want. It's a poverty mindset. And yet, man, we serve a God that is the opposite. I mean, God does everything in abundance, right? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and he says, why do you worry about today? Like, look at the birds of the air. Right? They don't plant or sow or harvest, and yet God provides for them. How much more will He provide for you? He is a God who can give us abundantly more than we can even ask and think and imagine. God says, I want you to step out of just worrying and focusing on yourself and what you can get to thinking about what comes down the road. What legacy are we leaving? How are we forming it? And certainly He means it in a practical sense in the world with our wealth or political power or whatever, but He also means it in an emotional sense. I mean, it's like the parable of the man who owes the king basically an infinite debt, and the king forgives him, and then the man extracts, a debt from somebody else and throws him in prison. And Jesus is saying, man, you have been given abundant grace that is forgiven so much more than you could ever have, and yet you hold it over the head of others. You don't forgive. You don't love. You don't trust. You see, God wants us to live and operate out of an abundant mindset. To open our hearts and our minds to others, to hear others, to love others, to let let goodness come through, to think about more than today and what we have, to think about bigger, farther down the road. Do you do that? I mean, when you get scared or frustrated with our world and you're thinking about the future, do you worry about today or a couple weeks down the road? Or do you think big picture? Are you willing to lay down power, your rights, for the sake of something bigger? Or do you cling to a poverty mindset? Can I challenge you? Live for God's principles, even at the sacrifice of getting what you want today. Find some way to lay down, maybe even the right to win, for something bigger. Because if we don't do that, we end up eating each other and tearing each other apart. God provides for the birds of the air. He'll take care of us. Wherever you're at, stay on mission, and God bless.